What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the overall market going into tomorrow, but you should be watching for earnings, as we just had Meta and IBM announce their earnings, and things are not looking too good for them. Before I begin the doubles information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks. You deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 75 of them. And the offer ends very soon, in just 6 days. Anyways, for NIO, I'm noticing a very similar pattern to that of Tesla. And I mentioned to everyone yesterday that whatever happens to Tesla will have a big effect on NIO. They're both forming these potential diamond reversal patterns. I think that Tesla could get one more pump up before it tries to continue to drop. And in order for this to really sink, we have to see this thing essentially lose 158, and that's going to really cause more downside. And I think it's going to have a big effect on NIO as well. One thing worth noting about NIO is in this trend, we have this resistance at our 200 EMA on the hourly time frame. We haven't been able to break that. We'll have to see how we move from here. So I want to break down more insights about this over the next couple of minutes. But I first need to talk about what's going on with the markets going into tomorrow, the news about NIO and such. So once again, this is what this diamond reversal pattern could actually look like if you were to look at it like this. I've seen something similar developing on these charts. But going back, I just wanted to mention that for the overall market, I'm going to talk about this first before I break down news about NIO. Tomorrow is going to be Thursday, April 25th, and we have some important data coming out. We firstly have the GDP numbers coming out alongside initial jobless claims. We want to see if you get a GDP growth rate of 2.5%. For initial jobless claims, we want this to be around 213 to 214,000. Additionally, we also have more expectations coming out for PCE, so we'll have to see what this causes for the markets. Then we have a bunch of bill auctions coming out, so we'll see what that causes, but that's all that's coming out for tomorrow. Most of the data comes out an hour before the market opens, so watch and see what that causes. We have initial jobless claims and GDP numbers and GDP sales. So we'll see how it goes. With that being with that being said, we also have more earnings coming out. We just saw Meta, IBM, and Ford announce their earnings. Both Meta and IBM have dropped quite a bit, but Ford is still a little bit up. So Meta had the biggest drop of them all. The share price is down 16% as of right now. It dropped about 80 points. And the reason why it's dropping so hard is because of the fact that they had very, very weak expectations coming out, and earnings were not the greatest. So looking at this, let me put it this way. They're down quite a bit. EPS was about $4.71. That's above expectations. Revenue was about 36.46 billion, also above expectations. So at first glance, you might think, hey, that's pretty good. But the thing is, even though revenue did increase 27%, we do have a little issue that has emerged. Their net income also saw a little bit of a drift right over here. Marketing costs dropped about 16%. So that's not as bad as well, but this is what the issue is. So right over here, we're actually seeing that for the second quarter, sales are expected to be between $36.5 billion and $39 billion. The midpoint of the range is $37.75 billion. That represents about an 18% growth year over year. And overall, analysts are expecting something very different. So the company no longer reports daily active users and monthly active users for now. Instead, they're going to be talking about different metrics involving that. But because of this, investor expectations are typically very hot for the stock. And because their projections are not very strong, that's part of why the share price is kind of dropping the way it is. So right over here, we're seeing a weak guidance. That's playing a big role in why it's dipping like this. The first quarter results topped estimates, but it's a weak revenue guidance is kind of weak, and that's part of why it's dipping. On top of all of this, IBM is going to be acquiring HashiCorp in a $6.4 billion deal. That's some very important news. But when you look at their overall earnings, they ended up coming very short on revenue at $14.46 billion. So with that happening, with their revenue not being as strong and projections being just barely so, I would say that that's why the share price is also dipping a bit for them. They're down about 8.61%, so not the best of news. For Ford, they topped the first quarter earnings. Not too bad for them. They're up about 3.4%. They beat on EPS. They also beat on, they came a little bit short on revenue. They just barely met it. I would say just a tiny bit off. But besides that, it's looking like their overall guidance is pretty good between five. They're expecting their EV business to lose $5 to $5.5 billion this year. but their earnings are pretty much close and in line with what we're expecting. So decent earnings overall for Ford. That's part of why the share price is up. Now for NIO, we have some news that came out. NIO is opening their new power swap stations. They have new ones coming out. They have their 15th in Germany and 43rd in the whole of Europe. The new power swap station is located directly of the A6. The federal highway runs under from the French border near uh, the Czech Republic border. And that's actually very important because this gives them a lot more access for people who are interested in going to those different locations. So that's some big news for them. On top of this, there's been a lot of talk about NIO kind of lagging a little bit behind. The Chinese sales came out yesterday. They weren't too bad. And besides that, we're actually seeing it kind of following Tesla. Now, with what's about to come out in a few weeks, we have earnings coming out. We're seeing new forecasts coming out. We're seeing a loss of about $1.26 per share with revenue at $9.21 billion. So we'll see what happens at least from this point on. Now, with that moving forward, we'll see what happens with NIO, but that's what I'm seeing in terms of projections. Moving forward, volume was at about 34 million, a little bit below average. And on top of this, we saw about another neutral rating from Maguire. So the price ratio is down a little bit, and we have a tendency being green only about 50% of the time on Thursday. So it's kind of 50-50. But look for volatility at 11 a.m. and then during the final hour of the day. What do I see for the share price? Honestly, guys, I'm a little bit concerned about NIO because first off, we have this type resistance at this range at 4.15. We have a potential diamond reversal structure that's kind of it's starting to form. It's not perfect, but I could see it. And my concern is the overall market is showing some weakness after Meta's earnings and also because of the algorithms dictating SPY in the QQQ. So it looks to me like a dip could be coming if we lose our 20 EMA at 4.1. We're barely holding that. If we lose this, we're going to be looking for a dip to 4.04, then $4. There's a possibility of this. To be bullish, you want to see it break past 4.15, but all day today it kind of rejected off that. So there is a risk of this dipping all the way down to 4.04. Now, for Tesla has this very important range. This kind of resembles a diamond reversal, except we don't have our like right wick that really formed as well. So there could be one more pop coming to Tesla before it continues lower. I am seeing a risk of this, and we'll have to see if this ends up playing out. But the thing is, we're not going to worry too much about this pattern. Just look at the levels. We have this support at this 158 area. Every time Tesla hits this, it just kind of bounces. We have resistance in this 165 zone. Every time we came close to this, we rejected as well. And we were stuck between 160 and 162 for pretty much the entire day, besides one wick to the upside. Usually when you get a wick like this is a signal that might actually see some selling later on. So I'm a little concerned about that. Maybe we get one more pop and then drop back down, or we just drop from here with the market, and we could be looking for a test of 158 again, if not lower levels. So I'll be watching to see if this diamond reversal pattern ends up playing out. So I'm going to be very, very careful. But right now, I'm not really seeing this playing out yet. We're just waiting to see which way we break. So we're still stuck between supply and demand, and we'll have to give this a bit more time, and we'll see how things go from here. Looking at SPY is starting to sell off in the after hours, especially with Meta dipping. It's not just that; it's also because of the fact that we have this gap to fill at 499. So I think because of the fact that we lost this trend line right here now, we were holding this during the open hours and during the after hours. That's when we actually lost this. So I think with this rejection off our 200 EMA at 507, a key level, we're starting to reject here, and there is a risk of this dipping all the way back down to 499. So I do anticipate that for tomorrow, a little bit of downside for SPY. For the QQQ, I'm seeing the same thing. Got this nice rejection. We could be approaching 420, if not 417, if that fails. So I do see at least 420 coming, another 2 points drop. That's very probable. I think Meta is going to play a role in this, and they're going to be using that as a reason to dip things, and also because of what's happening with the overall market. So we'll be watching to see how things go. We'll be very, very patient in the process, and we'll just be waiting to see if anything improves from here on out. But I do anticipate a little bit of downside. Additionally, I just want to call out Aapl. Apple's looking bullish, continuing to hold up very, very nicely, outperforming the market. This could be on its way to 170 before we see some tight resistance and more shuffling. So watch and see if we push a little bit higher. And then lastly, we also have Nvda looking kind of weak right now. We have this gap to fill all the way down around 759, and we got this clean rejection off 846. So we could be looking for a retest of 795 before it continues lower, but I do think it's going to come all the way down to 767 at the very least and fill its gap closer to 750. So I do anticipate a bit more downside for Nvidia, which could drag the QQQ down. With that being said, the market is showing some signs of contraction. This could contribute to NIO rejecting. We're showing some weakness here, failing to break this resistance, so the odds do favor this coming down to $4 again. So I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the move. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely incredible rest of the day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on the next one. Thanks again, and peace out.